Welcome to our presentation on cultivating nonviolence, harvesting peace. We are so glad that you are here to join us today. Just a couple logistics before we start, just to let you know, you will be muted this entire call just to make space for everybody can hear the presentation. And then at the very end, we will have a time for questions and answers, and you can send your questions to Leela through the chat box, and you can find that box in the toolbar. It says chat, and so you can enter your questions and send them on to Leela at whatever point you would like to do so. I'm going to begin with a peace meditation that's actually in the first session of this program of Cultivating Nonviolence. It's by Cora Tabing Reyes, and it was originally found in a book by the Catholic Relief Services. So let us pray together. Oh God, we take time to pause from daily work, to gather our thoughts, to let our souls catch up with our bodies, to feel your presence in your creation, to ask forgiveness for our lapses, ours and on behalf of your people, and to be ourselves restored. Breathing in, God's Spirit calms our bodies. Breathing out, it's good to be alive. Lord Jesus Christ, we take time to gather around you. By your life and teachings, may we find our strength. In our journeying together, may we find our rest. Breathing in, Christ lives in our lives. Breathing out, it's good to be alive. Holy Spirit, creative energy of love and compassion, life embracing, life transforming, heal our bodies, heal our souls, heal our relationships, heal our nations. Breathing in, the Spirit heals. Breathing out, it's good to be alive. Amen. So I'm just going to begin this presentation by just telling you about just a bit about Just Faith Ministries if you're new to us. We seek to provide folks with a space to create community, a space to grow spiritually, and a space to be equipped for the work of justice, and especially in this case, the work of nonviolence. And so with that, we also have various opportunities for different focus areas within that broader mission. So you can see a list of all of our programs here. And so today, as you know, we'll be focusing on cultivating nonviolence and harvesting peace. But we'll also have information sessions about these other programs as well. So stay tuned for that. Just a little bit about the program itself. I'm just going to run through an overview of what the sessions are, because I think that will give you a good sense of what is actually in the program. So I'll start with session 1. Is an introduction to each other and the meaning of peace, violence, and nonviolence. In this session, your group will learn tools for holding conversations within the group itself in a way that involves dialogue rather than debate. And we always begin all of our programs with a conversation that's similar to this, in part because it helps to facilitate healthy conversation and learning, and also because it is an experience of worship when we are able to connect with each other in this way and experience God's presence in that space. And also because it helps to equip us to do that work and to engage in holy conversation outside of the group as well, and in the real world and in our relationships outside of that. In this session, the small group also looks at various definitions and interpretations of the words peace, nonviolence, and nonviolence, and they clarify what these terms mean and have meant to people throughout history, and they come to appreciate their power and their importance and their potential to create effective action. Session 2 focuses on the spirituality of nonviolence, because in order to effectively respond to nonviolence, we first, of course, have to do that inner work of identifying our own fears and what we'll stand up for, where we will give in, and what our core beliefs are. And so this session really gives groups an opportunity to get started on this. It also spends some time reflecting on nonviolence and its connection to the Christian tradition, and that strong, deep-rooted history, the connection between nonviolence and Christianity. Session 3 looks at the spirituality of nonviolence in our relationships. So this session particularly offers tools for nonviolent communication, which we can use in all of our relationships, from the people who live in our own house to the folks that we encounter out in our communities and in our nation, and even on the internet. And we practice that as a group, practicing that with a partner in the context of the group. This session also specifically addresses how we might use these tools to confront white supremacy and racism, and it helps participants explore how nonviolent principles and tools can help us to do this. Session 4 is on structural violence, so participants learn how to name, bear witness to, and confront structural violence. This particularly emphasizes that the violence that accompanies racism and white supremacy, but it gets at other forms of structural violence as well. And the group will spend a pretty big chunk of time during the session discussing how Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence can guide us in that work today. Session 5, a guest speaker is invited to the session. We suggest that this person be someone who has been part of nonviolent movements in the past, or practices nonviolence as their way of life, or does anti-violence work in the community. And of course, we recommend that this be someone from the local community, so that this can be an opportunity for folks to connect and envision ways in which they might be involved in their local community. But then again, the possibility of Zoom and video conferencing opens up a wide range of possibilities. So that happens in session 5, and then during the second half of this session, the group continues to look at nonviolent movements, and a particularly interesting video in this session looks at research on nonviolence and compares it to violent tactics, and participants explore the effectiveness and techniques of nonviolence. Session 6 is a focus on gun violence and nuclear weapons, and so participants take a deep dive into the complexity around these issues. And then during the second half of the session, they learn some techniques for advocacy. And they learn how to connect this and to understand advocacy as an expression of their faith and their spiritual practice. And between 6 and 7, there is an immersion experience in the local community. And with this, like the opportunity to host a guest speaker, participants have this opportunity to really get plugged into the work that is already going on in the local community, which we think really increases the chances that they will act on what they've learned and reflected on in this program. Session 7, it is on reconciliation and restoration, and so the group looks at examples of how these things have occurred, and how groups have facilitated restoration and reconciliation on local and national levels, so that they can see these models and envision what this might look like in their own communities and even in our nation. And then the last session, session 8, participants discern action steps, and they look at where seeds have been planted in their own lives throughout this 8-session journey, and they also consider possible ways of responding and commit to those action plans. So that's a little bit about the content of the program. Now we'll look at sort of the logistics and the mechanics of how this works. So like I said, there's 8 sessions. And then in addition to that, there's also an immersion experience. So this might extend your time together as a group to 9 or 10 weeks, depending on how you schedule that. And there's also opportunity for a guest speaker, but that's during session 5. Throughout the entire program, the sessions begin and open and close with prayer. There are spiritual practices that are incorporated throughout, and participants are guided in these spiritual practices between sessions. And so, some of these spiritual practices, they all facilitate introspection and spiritual preparation for practicing nonviolence. So some of them, they might involve techniques for nonviolent communication and practicing them in our relationships throughout the week, or tools for practicing advocacy as an expression of our faith. And the spiritual practices invite participants to do just that. So that's just a little bit about the structure. You'll see for the resources, we just have one book for this program. It's called Personal Nonviolence, A Practical Spirituality for Peacemakers. And that's available through our Just Faith Ministries bookstore, which you can find the link to that is online. And we have one book in this program. Normally we have 2 to 3, but this really makes room for a lot of videos and articles that really make this program relevant to folks' day-to-day experience, and also the passions that they have, and what's going on in our current reality. So I think that's about it from the programmatic content standpoint. And so I will turn it over to my colleague Leila Oakley to talk a little bit more about some more logistical things.
Great, thank you, Kristen. As Kristen said, my name is Leila Oakley, and I'm the Outreach and Engagement Associate for Just Faith Ministries. And a huge part of my work with Just Faith Ministries is working with facilitators across the country as they use these programs within their community. So I'm going to focus on some details with you all, and then from here we'll open up for Q&A. So I wanted to give you a little more information about what to expect in our program. So this information applies to all of our programs beyond Cultivating Nonviolence, Harvesting Peace, but it also applies to this program. Our programs can be done virtually or in person. So we have groups across the country who are using our programming through Zoom or another video conferencing platform. And right now we have virtual adaptations that go along with the in-person programs to help guide facilitators as they transition from in-person meetings to virtual meetings through Zoom or another platform. Ultimately, our goal over the next year is to develop complete virtual versions of every program. So we'll have an in-person version of Cultivating Nonviolence, Harvesting Peace, and a virtual program. As Kristen mentioned, these programs are 8 sessions plus a retreat and immersion experience. So there's 10 total gathering times together. They're designed for small groups. So we recommend between 8 to 15 if you're in person, but really 8 to 12 if you're meeting virtually. The programs are designed at 2.5 hours in length, but can be adjusted to 2 hours for those virtual gatherings. And as Kristen mentioned, there are weekly assignments, which include readings, as well as the spiritual practice activities and exercises. Now, this is just a snapshot of what a typical session looks like. So you begin, as she said, with a welcoming prayer and meditation. Typically, there's conversation around a video or an article. Then there's time for a break, announcements, and then another period of discussion around the reading that was done for that week. And every session, again, closes with prayer. Now, how to get started. So if you're interested in either using this program or another program within your community, what you do first is register for the program. So by going to justfaith.org and registering for the program and paying the $175 registration fee, you immediately get access to all of the material. And right now I'm seeing an error on my slides, so you'll have to forgive me. I have that discount note written in there for the Just Faith Catholic Information Meeting. So disregard that, because for this program, the registration fee is $175 plus the cost of books. And the fee is a one-time fee, which covers the cost for as many small groups within the church or parish that wants to use the program over the course of a year. In the future, our registration model will be changing, and with that, the registration fee will be changing. But for now, that is our current registration process. Once you register, you get access to all of the material and can begin planning and prepping for the implementation of the program in your community. You're going to want to identify whether you're meeting in person or virtually. For most of us, the safest option is virtual gatherings. And in order to support facilitators in the role of facilitating virtually, we've created training videos and support documents. And again, I'm available for one-on-one support to help facilitators facilitate well. The next thing is going to be identifying the facilitators. So as you can guess, the role of the facilitator is really important. These are the individuals who are going to be covering the logistics of the group, helping to plan the sessions, to lead the sessions. And what we've done at Just Faith Ministries is provide all of the support documents as well as one-on-one support that's necessary to lead and facilitate well. The facilitator does not have to be an expert. So to facilitate this program, you do not have to be an expert in nonviolence or nonviolent communication. You just have to be someone who's willing to take on the role of facilitating, take on the added time and commitment that comes with that, and to guide the group in the process. And then finally, the next step is to pick a date, to pick a platform, whether virtual or in person, to identify the role of facilitators, and then get started recruiting. So we have really great marketing material that's available to recruit for this program that you can use to send out emails, social media posts, newspaper announcements, and the list goes on. So we're here to help you in that process. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we are going to open up for Q&A. I know that was a lot of information pretty quickly. So I will, before you all start submitting your questions, I will let you all know that you'll be receiving a follow-up email from me, most likely on Monday. And in that email, I will include the slides that Kristen and I just presented on. So you'll have that information to review. And I will also include a edited recording of this meeting. So you can go back and rewatch it if you've missed any information, or share it with anyone who you think might want to learn a little bit more about the program. So we'll give everyone a minute or two to think of any questions you might have. Again, submit those through the chat, which is on the toolbar at the top or bottom of your screen, or if you're on your phone, you can tap your screen to find the chat box, and we're happy to answer any questions. So someone just asked a question about, is this a 3-phase program? And I am, again, so sorry that I kept that note in there and have thrown you all off. No, this is not a 3-phase program. The Cultivating Nonviolence Harvesting piece is one program that is 8 sessions plus an immersion experience. So it is not 3 phases, it's one program. Again, sorry for the confusion with that note in the slide. I'll be sure to correct that before I send it to you all on Monday. Kristen, could you speak to a question about the immersion experience? What do immersion experiences look like for virtual groups? Do we provide recommendations? What are some of those recommendations?
Sure. One of the things that we ask that, or we suggest that folks do, is invite a second guest speaker to come and speak to their group through video conferencing, of course. Or you can participate in a webinar or a training together. There's lots of webinars and trainings on nonviolent communication and nonviolent activism. Another thing you could do is watch a documentary. There are many on the history of nonviolent movements, and many on the civil rights movement as well, and nonviolent techniques with that. That being said, and we're happy to brainstorm with you one-on-one if you would like to be a little bit more creative about that. That being said, we also recommend that when it is possible, and if it is possible, to later meet and have an immersion experience in person in your community after COVID has passed. We recommend that you all commit to doing that as well as a virtual immersion experience, if that is possible.
So someone is asking if this is a new program. So when was this program initially written? And then a follow-up question to that, Kristen, and I'll let you answer first and I'll add on a little bit. Someone's asking about the impact of the program. So do you have any stories or story you could share about a community that's used this program and it's been a launch pad for action?
You know, I'm actually relatively new to the staff, so I don't know a lot of details about this one. It is not a new program, but it is updated. It's current for our, you know, our current reality. I came on the staff of May 2019, and so this program was written before I arrived, and so I would guess that it was 2016 or 2017, but I'll check on that and let you know in the follow-up email. And I'll also ask our executive director for some stories, because she's usually the one who receives that. So we'll send that out to you as well.
Great. Yeah, we can include some testimonials in the follow-up email. I will share a story. I know there was a community that engaged with this program, and out of that, they spearheaded but also joined forces with some other entities in their local community to really advocate for teaching nonviolent action in schools and as a part of youth education, and have mobilized around that movement in their local community. So wanting to bring nonviolent action and what that looks like in nonviolent communication to youth in their community. Kristen, someone asks about the use of articles and videos in addition to the books. Are these provided by Just Faith Ministries, or are they something that they have to go out and find on their own? How does that process work?
Yes, they are provided by Just Faith Ministries, and you know, they're meant to tie in with what folks are talking about in the session itself. So they provide the background reading and framework for discussion. And videos are used within the sessions themselves, and sometimes for homework between sessions. The groups can find these. Everyone who participates in the program will sign up for an account, and so they'll be able to find the list of all of these videos and reading assignments and articles in their participants account.
Thank you. So a question has come in, Kristen, about in your portion of the presentation, you mentioned how the material speaks to the issue of white supremacy or racism and racial violence. This person is recognizing that those are really complicated terms, and the definition and understanding of those terms has changed and shifted, and is wondering if questions about how those terms are defined or how those realities exist in the world are discussed in this program. And I would follow up to that, say, what other programs does Just Faith Ministries offer that explore those issues?
Yes, there's absolutely room for it to, there's absolutely space in the conversations to talk about these terms and what they mean, and how they are playing out in our current reality. That said, there's to discuss this more in depth. We have 3 programs that are strictly on racism and racial justice, faith and racial equity on exploring power and privilege, faith and racial healing, which narrates the history of racism in the United States, and then faith and racial justice, which looks at systems and structures and how we can impact, we can dismantle racism and the system structures and institutions today. So the short answer is yes, there is space to talk about these things and to discuss them with your group, and there are reading materials and videos on the subject matter. But to discuss this in even greater depth, I suggest you check out those other 3 programs.
Great. Someone has asked about whether this program in particular could be used with either grade school or high school students. And I'll answer this one, Kristen, and then feel free to jump in. These programs are designed as adult education courses, programs, so it's meant for an adult audience. With that being said, college students or maybe even some older high school, really mature older high school students could find the material really relevant and engaging. But what we've done at Just Faith Ministries is we've actually created a program geared towards youth. And we had an information meeting on the Youth for Justice program a month or so ago, and we do have a recording, so I'd be happy to send that to you if you'd like to take a look at it. And that program is specifically geared towards middle school and high school youth, and it explores a wide variety of topics. So it does explore issues of nonviolence, and could be a really appropriate match if, say, you're in a church and the adults want to engage with this program, and then the youth want to take part in one of the Youth for Justice programs that deals with the same topic. The next question, Kristen, anything you want to add there?
No, that sounds about right.
Okay. The next question I've received is about training for facilitators. So this person is wondering whether or not to be a facilitator, you have to have already done a Just Faith Ministries program or have some kind of prior training. And the answer is no, you don't. We have first-time facilitators who are engaging with our programming for the first time and facilitating, and that can be done, and it can be done well. What we've done is we've provided various training documents that the facilitator receives upon registration that really outline what the role of the facilitator is, give tips about how to facilitate well, and give them everything that they need to take on that role for the first time. There will be a little bit of a bigger learning curve as there is with doing anything new for the first time. That for those who are going to be taking on that challenge, I just recommend giving yourself a few weeks extra to become familiar with the material before you get started, so you can spend the time reading through all the material and preparing to get started, and then have time to ask me any questions if you have any that come up. Let's see, I'm looking down the questions. I'm looking down the list of questions to see if I've mentioned anything. Kristen, someone has asked about the pricing for the Youth for Justice program. Could you speak a little bit to how the pricing is a little bit different than the Cultivating Nonviolence Harvesting Peace pricing?
Sure. So while the Cultivating Nonviolence program is $175, and that includes all the materials that you need for those eight sessions plus the immersion experience. Youth for Justice is different in that participants buy one program or one session at a time, and you can buy multiple of them. And the reason that we did that is because we know that each youth group is different and has different areas of passion and interest and has different scheduling issues. And so that's intended so that you can just get, one session or as many as you want, and really tailor that to the needs of your specific group. Pricing wise, I might need to get back to you on that. Leela, do you happen to know the price of Youth for Justice?
I do not have those numbers memorized, but if you go to our website, go into the Youth for Justice program page, the pricing is clearly outlined. It is a bundling system, as Kristen mentioned, so if you have one purchase, it's a certain fee versus if you purchase 3 or 6. If you can't find that on our website, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to give you that information directly. Kristen, could you speak to the opportunities, the unexpected opportunities that come along with being able to lead these programs virtually, in particular, how it shapes who could be included in a virtual program?
Oh, sure, absolutely. That's one of the unexpected, just blessings at this time. Is that you can include folks from all over the nation or even different countries if you wanted to. So, I had actually considered with my own group of friends, most of them from college, were scattered all over the place, and so we have been talking about doing a Just Faith program as a way of nourishing ourselves during this really difficult time in our country and our history, and also learning about a topic that we really care deeply about. So you're able to incorporate people from all over the place. And you also have the opportunity to bring in a guest speaker from somewhere different who you might not otherwise get to talk to in your local community.
Great, thank you. Someone asks about what type of follow-up activities might this lead to, or what sort of opportunity is there for discernment about next steps? So how does the program create an opportunity for people to discern where to go from the program forward?
Sure. Well, I'll say that throughout the program, through the immersion, the guest speaker, the spiritual practices, participants have a chance to employ these practices that they've been learning about in the session and reading about in their personal lives, and to learn to engage in advocacy in a way that people are supported by one another within the group in doing these things, whether it's developing principles of techniques for nonviolent communication, or if it's writing your congressional representatives, or if it is getting involved in a nonviolent movement in your own local community. Participants support one another in the process as they are going on throughout the program. That said, at the end of the program in session 7, participants really begin to discern and put together a plan of next steps. There is a list of potential next steps that are just suggestions for ways that people might get involved, including, like I said, advocacy and getting involved in nonviolent movements. There's a list of these potential next steps, but there's also an opportunity to brainstorm and to pray and discern. And they begin doing that at the end of session 7 and session 8. Most of the session is spent doing exactly that, putting together a plan of action, and also a process of accountability for following up with one another and ensuring that the participants are supporting one another in carrying on what they have learned and discerned and committed to doing in response.
Someone has asked about the group size. So if you are leading an in-person Just Faith Ministries program, we recommend between 8 and 15 individuals. If you are leading a virtual program, we recommend between 8 and 12. And the reason we recommend a smaller group virtually is really there's a couple different reasons. The first is if you're meeting virtually, there's a good chance that you've decided to shorten the program from 2.5 hours to 2 hours. And in order to allow for that reduced time together, there's less time for conversation. And so if you're dividing the time for conversation among 10 people versus 15, that's a very significant difference in the amount of time each individual gets to share. So that allows for more sharing across the board when you have a smaller group. And then also, if you've been on Zoom calls before with small groups, there's 2 different display functions, which means 2 different ways you can see people's faces on the screen. You can either have it in speaker view, where if you're in that mode, my face is really huge right now, or you can have it in display view where everyone is in squares. And what we hear a lot is that people in their small groups like to have it in display view where they see everyone's face. And what that does is it almost gives the feeling of being in the same room together. And so if you have 15 tiles, 15 different people, and they're all tiles on your screen, their faces are smaller than if you have 8 or if you have 10, because they grow depending on how many faces need to fit on a screen. So while that seems like a small detail, it's those little things that really allow for that sense of connectivity over Zoom. And so those are the 2 primary reasons we recommend the smaller size when you're meeting. I keep saying Zoom, meeting over Zoom or another platform. And the last question I'm seeing is about facilitating a virtual group and just some apprehension about facilitating a virtual group. I want to let you all know that when you are a part of a virtual small group, there's really not a ton of technological skill you need to have to be a participant. You have to be able to get on a call like you did today, turn on your screen and unmute yourself when you're able to. But to be a facilitator, you do need more skill than that. And the skills are not huge in that you don't have to learn how to use every aspect of the platform that you're using to facilitate the small group, but you do need certain skills in order to do it well. And so what we've done at Just Faith Ministries is hone in on the Zoom platform, because that's what we use as a staff, and most of our communities across the country we're choosing to use. So we have created a series of training videos to help train facilitators on how to lead their virtual small group using Zoom. There's also a ton of free videos from Zoom that help in that process, and same with any other platform. So we encourage facilitators to to play around with the platform they want to use to gain familiarity, to gain those skills, and then their participants can really be an experience, and that's okay, because all they have to do is be able to click a link and turn on their video. I am not seeing any other questions. If you have any last-minute questions, feel free to enter those into the chat now, and we'll be happy to answer them. If you think of a question later, let's say an hour from now, you have a question pop into your mind that you did not ask, you are more than welcome to send me an email. My email is Leela, which you can see my name right under my face, leela@justfaith.org, and I'm more than happy to answer your question over email or set up a phone call if we need to. Kristen, anything else you would add before we close the meeting?
I just want to say I'm grateful for you all being here. I know if you're here, you are here because you care about building justice and peace in your communities and in our nation as well. And just know that we are in solidarity with you as you seek to do that, whether it's through our programs or not. We're grateful for your work. I think that's it. Thank you again for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Have a lovely afternoon, and you will hear from me on Monday.